All right, so welcome to our spring installation of the I've been practicing. Dr. Baggili, he's from LSU. So Dr. Baggili is a first-generation Arab American. He is a professor of computer science and cybersecurity at Louisiana State University, and he's the founder of the BIT Lab, the Baggili Truth Lab. He holds a joint appointment between the Division of Computer Science and Engineering and the Center for Computational Technology, and has won numerous awards, including the CT Civil Medal of Merit, little alliteration there. Also the Medal of Thor from the Military Cyber Professional Association, CT 40 under 40, and is a fellow of the European Alliance for Innovation. Prior to that, he was the director of the Connecticut Institute for Technology and Elder Family Endowed Chair of the Computer Science and Cybersecurity at, pronounce that for me. No, Tagliatella. Whew, a lot of tongue twisters for me today. Tagliatella College of Engineering at the University of New Haven. So he received his Bachelor of Science, Master of Science, and Ph.D. all from Purdue, where he worked as a researcher. He worked with his students and uncovered vulnerabilities that impacted over 1 billion people worldwide, and he's been featured in news and other TV outlets in over 20 languages and has published extensively in the domain of digital forensics. And the title of his talk today is Tales from the BIT Lab, from rumor revelations to mixed reality mysteries. So without further ado, I present to you Dr. Baggili.
All right, thank you. That was a mouthful. Appreciate the introduction. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. I'm dressed up in purple. There's a lot of purple in this room, so I think I did the right thing. I didn't know about the colors. I guess I'm in the right place at the right time. I also want to thank my students, because without them, none of this research that I'm going to be talking about today would have been possible. So thank you to my students. And maybe I wanted to highlight 2 of them, which some of you know. They're actually alumni from here. We have Clinton and Lauren. So if you ever feel like doing any research or thinking about doing your PhD, you should talk to them, and they'll probably tell you not to work with me. Or they might tell you to work with me. Either way. So who am I? I'm as old as the sound. For those of you who put your hand up, you know what the sound is. All right, what is the sound? What is it? What's the sound that you're hearing? Radio? Okay, you're definitely very young. Dial up? Yeah, like it is dial up, and that's what we associate it with, but it's just really a modem, right? It's a modem. I started using, when I used the internet, I used to dial in, and to download a music file, it would take me 4 or 5 hours, sometimes 2 days. Nowadays, that's not how it works. How did I get into cybersecurity? That's one of the first things that people ask me. Well, what you see here is a computer system called Sakhar, which was an Arabic computer, which Hassan might have seen during his childhood. And this was a computer that had cartridges. And then to make things cheaper, people started saving the game data onto cassette tapes. And we would have to put the cassette tapes into the computer and load games onto the computer using cassette tapes, the ones that, you know. By the way, my students are here, and I wanted to highlight them again. You guys were in the slides, so thank you for coming. Okay, so why cyber? I used to like cops, and as you can tell from looking at me right now, probably wouldn't be a good cop. Initially, I liked breaking things, and one of my earliest things was we had a phone line at home. When we got dial-up, we had to get 2 phone lines, obviously, because one would be busy because of the internet. And I figured out how to work the RJ cables, and I was able to connect it to the stereo, and I started recording my sister's conversations. So I was a mini NSA at home, and my dad walked in. He was really mad at me because I did that, and he started laughing. He was like, "Can you teach me how to do that?" And that's when I was like, "Oh, there's something cool about this, and maybe I should get into it." So what are we going to be talking about today? 3 main things. I'm going to introduce cybersecurity from a high-level perspective. I'm going to introduce digital forensics. I'm going to share current research, and maybe we'll dance a little bit. But what I wanted to share with you are these images that I used Bing's image creation platform. And the first one there, do you see the thing in red around that person? What do you see? I told it, give me an image that represents cybersecurity. And what did it come up with? What's that person holding? A gun, because apparently a gun is cybersecurity, right? So this goes to show you how AI might fail. I thought that was funny, so I kept it. Okay, and maybe I'll motivate you to pursue your graduate degree and not focus on theoretical computer science. That's an internal joke. And maybe think about cool research. Maybe deter you away from cryptography a little bit, because I know a lot of people love cryptography here. But okay, it's fine. Okay, there's one person that loves cryptography. I don't mind cryptography. I think it's cool as long as you can break it. And we'll talk about this maybe some other time, like, during the presentation. And, I always ask this, who likes money? Put your hand up. All right, if you didn't put your hand up, you didn't put your hand up. I don't trust you, because everybody likes money, right? And that's kind of the reality of the situation. And that's why getting a degree in cybersecurity is really awesome, because you get to make money, you get to help people. Not just make money, you get to help people, you get to save lives. All of these things are part of cybersecurity. So what is it? This is a definition that comes from CISA, right, from DHS. And if you notice, they say cybersecurity is the art. And I do believe in that, right? And that's how they define it, but it's also the art and science. Because there is no science without good art. Think about everything that we've accomplished in our lives. They probably showed up in some book talking about what's going to happen in the future, right? And then it happens. The perfect example of that is the movie Idiocracy, if you've never seen it. Who's seen Idiocracy? Okay, yeah. If you have not seen Idiocracy, you're going to go home tonight, you're going to watch it, and then you're going to come back tomorrow and be like, this movie predicted everything. All right? So the other thing about cybersecurity that people don't think about, right, is that it's a huge field. This is from NICE, and NICE is a national initiative for cybersecurity education. And this showcases how many different job roles there are in cybersecurity. There's 52 work roles in cybersecurity, right? You know how you're a doctor and you can specialize in becoming a brain surgeon and you can specialize in all of these other things? It's the same thing in cybersecurity. You can specialize in one component of cybersecurity and become really good at that, because there's 52 different roles that you can have in a job in cyber. So it's not just like, I have cybersecurity and that's it. You can be in incident response, you can be in digital forensics, you can be in offensive security, you can be in defensive security, you can be in the protection, you can be in the IT, you can be in the business area. All of these things are part of cybersecurity. So it's not just one thing. And that's very important for you to think about as you're considering pursuing maybe a career or a degree in this domain. And is there money? I think there is. Look at the jobs, look at how much money is available, look at the base salaries. They're all fantastic, right? Now, things are changing. Companies are sometimes not very smart when they're recruiting, and there are problems in that, because sometimes they'll be like, we need a fresh cybersecurity graduate with 5 years of experience. I've seen those, by the way, right? We need a fresh cybersecurity graduate with 10 years of experience. I once saw, we need 10 years of experience. I think it was in Splunk, but Splunk as a company at that time only existed for 5 years. Right? So these are the kind of things you see from organizations that are trying to hire. So there is definitely some issues there, but overall it's a pretty good field to be in. And what I want to highlight here is also the importance of critical infrastructure, right? Everything that you do and everything, the water that you drink, the electricity that you turn on, the computers that you use, your fridge, your toilet. A lot of people have toilets that are connected to their phones now, right? It's true. Everything is connected. Everything is part of what we do. But also the critical infrastructure relates to things that are so important to you. Imagine not gaining access to your bank account. Imagine your electricity turning off. right? What would you do? What would you do, sir? Would you be happy? No, you would not be happy because you wouldn't be able to even come to school. You wouldn't be able to do your homework. You wouldn't be able to eat your food. You wouldn't be able to drink your water. And what you see there, down there, is a picture of a setup that, Sean, maybe put your hand up. LaShawn set up this critical infrastructure system with 3 different PLCs that she's configuring so that we can study the security of those devices and the systems in general, right? So now I'm going to pivot to what is digital forensics, because my assumption, how many of you have taken a digital forensics class? So my assumption was correct. And what I wanted to kind of bring to the table is what digital forensics is, because before I would talk about what, some of the projects we're working on, I thought it would be important. This is what digital forensics is, right? Does anyone like The Lion King in here? Right, a couple of people. Right? You're gonna start singing the circle. All right. All right, we're not gonna do it. But I did cite it using APA style. Lion King, 1994. If you notice. Okay, so you remember the scene when he's sitting with his son and he's like, everything the light touches is my kingdom, is our kingdom, actually. Do you remember that? So that's what I think of when I think of digital forensics. Everything data touches is my kingdom. So if I had my daughters with me and I'm training them to be the future digital forensics gurus, that's exactly what I would tell them. Because that's what we do. We want to find your data. We want to find your data that's on your phone. We want to find the data that's in your fridge. We want to find the data that's in your shoes. We want to find the data that's in your eyes. Plenty of cases have been solved because of data that we are able to uncover, right? How many of you have a Fitbit? Okay, a case was just solved because they were able to tell at what point the lady's heart stopped, right, when they found her murdered on the side of the road from her Fitbit, right? And because of that data and corroborating that data, they were able to figure out who killed her and when and why and where, right? So that kind of data exists, and that's what we try to do in digital forensics. It's about the extraction of digital evidence in a law and scientific way. All right. And what does the process look like? That's what it looks like. You collect the evidence, you transport it, you analyze it, and you report it. All right? It's easy to put it this way, but it's actually more complicated if you're trying to do it. There's two kind of definitions I'd like to share with you. The first one is a digital crime scene, and the second one is digital evidence. And the digital crime scene could be the environment where you would find the digital evidence, right? And digital evidence is the evidence, but it's digital. All right, are we good? And you can find evidence everywhere, all right? Think about that calculator app that's on your phone that stores the images you don't want other people to see. Why are you laughing? I mean, my students and I broke all these apps, and we know how to get the data, even though they're encrypted and they're hidden, right? Even though they use cryptography, we were able It doesn't matter. If there's a key, we'll find it. Once you find the key, it's game over. Or keys. Okay? So, some of you have pictures that we probably don't want to see, that's for sure. All right? And a lot of those apps that you think are also secure are probably not very secure. And my students and I did some research, and were able to download a lot of the pictures that you were sharing personally with other people from the servers of some of these applications. And we reported them to the organizations. But there's 3 A's in digital forensics that almost will never change, right? It's the acquisition, the authentication, and analysis of evidence, right? When you acquire evidence, the perfect example in computer forensics is you have a computer there, the computer has a hard drive. I will take that hard drive out, and then I need to forensically image it. What do? I copy the data, bit for bit, and I create a forensic image. The forensic image could be a file or multiple files, or it could be another hard drive. It doesn't matter, but I'm making an exact copy, a replica copy of that hard drive. And then I authenticate it. And how do I do that? I hash the copy and I hash the original. And if the hash values match, I know that the data hasn't changed. So that's authentication. And the idea is now I can analyze the data without modifying it. And I can prove without a reasonable doubt that I did not change the forensics process. Okay, that was our primer on digital forensics. What did we learn? We learned that you have pictures on an app on your phone that you shouldn't have. Maybe. Okay, I'm going to pivot now, and I'm going to talk about some of the research that we've been up to. The first research I'm going to touch on are things that my students have seen before, and it's work that I've been doing for a couple of years on virtual reality security and forensics. And the work was supported by NSF. Does anyone watch Ready Player One? A couple of people? Who likes them? Yeah? So I don't think the metaverse exists at this point in time. It might exist at some point, but it doesn't at this point in time. I don't want to get into it. But you're going to have this connection of all of these devices where you immerse yourself inside of virtual reality and connect with other people. Has anyone ever played with a Quest 2 or 3 or 1? Yeah? Okay, they're getting better, right? And obviously you've seen the new release from Apple. It's supposed to be cool. There's some issues with it, but I don't want to get into these conversations right now. We can talk about them afterwards, okay? But it's happening. This is what I remember as the first device in virtual reality, right? When I was a kid, I lived in the United Arab Emirates, and I used to go to the store to buy a very specific magazine to tell me about the newest technologies. And I looked at the Virtual Boy, and I was like, man, this is the coolest thing ever. And then I tried it. I'm like, this thing sucks. All right? So it's no longer like this is the point. Okay? But the stats show us that we're moving in that direction. All the way from the amount of users to the industries that are using this, we know that augmented and virtual reality is a real thing. And I'll talk about that more in terms of what governmental use there is for that. And it's also pretty bad, right? And there are some legal implications that we're not thinking of, right? There's already been people that have been groped in virtual reality. And how do you deal with that? Because it's not physical groping, it's virtual groping, right? Is it wrong? Yes, of course it's wrong. Does it have an adverse impact on the person in there? Yes, it does, right? How do you deal with it legally could be another question that we would need to figure out. And a lot of times kids are using these things, right? So that exacerbates the problem. So from a technological perspective, now we have inside-out trackers. But before, when I started doing this research, you'd have the head-mounted display, and you'd have the trackers and the lighthouses around you that can track your movement and so on and so forth. There's a lot of privacy implications. What you see at the bottom there, right, is an actual video of one of the methods that we use to be able to track a person remotely, right? So if we get into your system, we could see your exact head movement and your exact hand movement, and that would give us an inclination of where you are in a physical space. So my student and I got thinking about this, and actually this happened by mistake. So the story for this is we were at an art gallery and we were showing out some, like they were like, oh, Abe, you do virtual reality. We have this virtual reality stuff. I was like, no, we're just trying to hack it. It's like, just come anyways. So we put people in virtual environments, and my student had a Python script and he messed up some of the variables in it. And that changed the dimensions of the room, and it changed the center of the room, the virtual room. And what happened when he did that is the girl that was wearing the headset moved to the right. And we're like, whoa, we're just controlling her movement. And we kind of found this by mistake, right? But then we created the actual attack, and we called it the human joystick attack. And there's a video of it on the left-hand side demonstrating that. So by modifying the virtual center of the room and moving it forward, what happens is that people compensate for that movement. So what are we actually doing? We are capable of moving people from one location to another without their knowledge or consent. Is that good? It's not good, right? What's really cool is that it showcases our ability to manipulate human beings and they won't even know that they're being manipulated because they're busy playing a game or performing an action or a task. And on the right-hand side is a disorientation attack. You probably feel sick from just looking at it, but imagine being in virtual reality and seeing that. It'll probably cause you to throw up, which is not great. And we tested this across multiple games, and this is the data from the headset tracker. And what you see at the bottom is what people thought they did, and what you see at the top is what they actually did. They moved from the green dot to the red dot. And in every scenario, we were successful almost in every single case in moving people. Okay, but there's other types of attacks that we showcased. And if you see at the bottom, you'll see the papers if you want to read them, and go ahead and take a look at them. The other one is a chaperone attack. And the chaperone is this basically virtual wall that you see, because when you set up these systems, you set up a virtual wall so you don't run into the real wall. Well, if you would take that away, you'll probably crash into the wall. Well, what if we can hijack your glasses, right, and place images there, inappropriate images, images of your children, images of your family members, or just images to take over your glasses as you need to perform a task? It becomes a problem. And the last attack, which is, I believe, is the most novel one, is called the man in the room attack, right? And in this attack, I'm sure you've heard of the man in the middle attack. It's kind of the same concept, but I could be in a virtual environment completely invisible to you. I could see you, I could hear you, I could see everything that you're doing, and you won't know that I'm there, right? And we showed that we are capable of doing this. And we did this essentially by a cross-site scripting attack on a major room that everybody has to join, and then it just traverses through the entire system. So then we're like, well, what can you do to stop this from happening? Well, we need to develop some forensic capabilities. And we created a tool, which is for volatility, which is a memory forensics analysis tool that goes into your memory and then identifies the pointers of where your headset is and where your controllers are. And what it does is that it draws the environment for you to see where was the last instance of the headset and the controllers. So if we were in an investigation and we get to that computer, we grab that computer's memory, we can tell some of these things, which would be really cool. Now, why is this important? I think it's important because what I always tell people is that if you don't like your significant other, one of the best ways is if they're wearing virtual reality headsets, right? Why? Because they can't see anything, they can't hear anything, they're completely immersed. Now, don't go ahead and do it, because then I'll be held liable for it. But since this was said on your campus, I'm just saying, you're legally liable for it. Okay, what about education? Well, why can't we use virtual reality to teach digital forensics? And we actually did this. I partnered up with a company that's supposed to be me, does not look like me. It is my voice. If I raise the voice, you can hear me. But we've created a game where you're now tasked with finding evidence on a crime scene. And if you can actually hear this person's voice, they sound Irish, because the company is based out of Ireland, and they're talking to their customers and so on and so forth, or they're talking to you as an investigator, and then the next step is you go into the crime scene and you try to identify all of the objects. So we could actually use virtual reality in education, and it's really great because we can create buildings for no cost. I created an entire building in virtual reality for maybe $2,000 or $1,000 or less, right? Compared to building a real building, which would cost me millions of dollars. Okay, which brings me to my next research now.
All right, folks, before we get this party started, please take the first surprise. I'm not sure if you were the first time, but I asked you to please take a quick look through your seats.
All right, you didn't fall for this because you sound really bored. But this is Obama's voice generated through AI telling you to take a look under your seat. And I did this at a conference, at a TED Talk, and everybody looked under their seat because we are deceived by these things. You see these things happen every day. So now we have a major DARPA project, which is ongoing in our lab, where we're looking at how deception can be used in mixed reality systems. And at the top of the screen on the left-hand side is Shannon's communication model. Has anyone ever seen Shannon's communication model in any of your classes? You haven't? Okay, if you're a double E student, I'm 100% sure you would have seen this. But the idea here is all of these, you have a communication happens when you have a sender and you have a receiver, and there's all sorts of communications that happen there. But our research also we were able to create a system, or not a system, a framework that we could use to analyze mixed reality attacks. And we just submitted this paper for publication. And the framework, you see the framework overall down there, right? Typically, you have two kinds of attacks. You have an attack that attacks the channel, which is the headset itself, or you have attacks that attack the processing, because we process information. And how we process information, now you delve into psychology, right? Sometimes you delve into biology, right? But we need to understand these things, because we can assume that a system is going to be hacked. Now, how that's going to be manipulated and how it's going to manipulate the user is very important. And why is DARPA funding this? Because they are going to start deploying military personnel with augmented reality headsets as whenever they go to war or whenever they do anything like that, right? So what's the adversary going to do? They might get into your headset and they can manipulate you as a person. Take a left, take a right. There's a B here. Maybe there's no B, right? And so on and so forth. And that allowed us to create a framework that helps you assess the different kinds of attacks that we invented. Okay? You can see that there's overt degradation, covert degradation, denial, which is just taking away anything that we want from your headset. There's corruption, where you're corrupting a message that they're looking at. But then there's also the other types of attacks that, again, we had to come up with or find in literature. And then you see the information theoretic model, right? And next to it, you see the decision-making model. How it affects your perception, how it affects your attention, and how it affects your memory. And what type of memory does it affect? Does it affect your working memory, or does it affect your long-term memory? Something like propaganda is going to affect your working memory and your long-term memory, right? So now, if you have new attacks that we can come up with, we can lay them out, and we can try to explore all of these different variables as they relate to the person, but also as they relate to the specific attack. All right. I'm taking a break. All right, that's what the paper is called. I've got you under my skin, biohacking augmentation implant forensics. And this work was done by Steven Seiden, one of our undergrad students. So what are the contributions? We were the first to look at this. What are augmentation implants? Has anyone ever seen them? Yeah? Okay, I want to know. Do you have one in you? No? Okay. So augmentation implants are these devices that you can buy and just inject in yourself because you're cool. Right? You can inject them in yourself because you can go ahead to a door and do this and impress your significant other, I guess, or partner, so you can open a door. Or something to that nature. Or you can pay using your hand. And we'll talk about this in a second. But these are real devices that are coming into existence, and we're starting to augment ourselves with this kind of technology. Remember how I was talking about digital forensics? How you take a hard drive out of a computer? This changes the game. Now I have to take the hard drive out of you. Medical procedure. It's no longer just me opening a system. I literally have to slash your hand open or like do something, right? So that's really why this is interesting. And they are becoming more popular. You can see people mentioning themselves, augmenting themselves over time. And you could see all sorts of news stories out there about this happening. 13% of worldwide consumers are extremely interested in utilizing an implant as a form of payment. 51% of European consumers would consider getting one of these implants. Right. So the next time you're in Starbucks, just wave your hand, right? You know what the next iteration of that is? You don't have any money, it just caps your hand, right? No? That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. It's like, nope, nope, punishment. This is a real thing. You can go to websites and you can buy them right now. This is not a sales pitch. But you can go to Dangerous Things. It's called dangerousthings.com. And you can buy augmentation implants from dangerousthings.com. Not a great name if you're trying to sell a product, but they're also one of the biggest sellers, right? And that's where we bought our devices from. What if you're trying to smuggle data through an airport using some implants? What if you have an encryption key, right, that's on the implant? What if all sorts of kind of questions come up when with these implants. So typically, like I said, you would have to open the hard drive. Now the game has changed. Now you have to discover the hardware. Because you can't just look at somebody who's like, you've got an implant and you've got an implant. You can't do that. Right? So how are you going to do it? And what's some effective techniques for doing that? Right? And once you discover it, what do? Do you take it out? How do you take it out? So what we did is we bought these things. And we're like, this is cool. And then we took Lauren. She's not looking at me right now. Now she's going to look. We took Lauren and we're like, yo, Lauren, we're going to implant some devices in you. And we took LaShawna, like, we're going to implant some devices in you. There's a couple of devices right now in Clinton, actually. That's actually not what happened. Because they would not allow us to do that for research purposes. Unless we get IRB approval, maybe, and I don't think we can. Maybe we can. I don't know. I'm not going to try. Okay, because I'm a lazy researcher. I went on Amazon with Steven, and I bought synthetic skin, and that's what we did our research on. As you can see there, there's silicone skin, and we injected it in silicone skin, and we tried to see how well it works. Okay? But then, because we're crazy, we're like, that's not enough. We're going to also buy some chicken. We're going to implant these devices in some chicken. Is this closer to human flesh? And then see what happens. And we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so we bought these devices. We tested them. And part of the reason why we wanted this skin is because we wanted to see if we can detect these devices in skin. Because the first thing that came to my mind was like, yo, let's just buy some of those metal detectors, right, that you see everywhere and see if they can detect them. Because that would be like the easiest way to detect them, right? You're going to a show, and like what's that? It's just to open my door. Oh, okay. All right. There's different kinds of ways of discovering devices, but that's not what we're going to be talking about. And this is what we did. We implanted it in chicken skin, and you can see on the left, right, you can find it in a bone-in chicken and in a boneless chicken. So you can actually detect them using X-rays. Right? Not the greatest way of detecting them, because you literally have to put someone in a room and get an X-ray of them and do all of these things, right? But then we're like, okay, do metal detectors work? So we started injecting them in these skins, and then we tried to see how deep we can inject them until they become undetectable. And in most cases, they were not detectable, which maybe gave us an insight that, that's not great. It really seems like they're hard to detect using like normal off-the-shelf stuff. But if you want to take them out, yeah, you can do an X-ray and you can find them. So if you detect that and you're working on a case, a digital forensics case, then you're going to have to take them out of a person. Now, is it legally okay to take that out of a person? Because now you're dealing with medical reasons. Like, not medical reasons, it becomes a medical procedure, right? And it turns out that there has been a case where a person had a bullet in them and they had to take it out for forensic reasons, and the court ordered them to take the bullet out, which maybe sets the precedent for us having to take a device out of a person, right? So if you have a bullet inside of you and you're trying to hide it, don't do it. They'll probably, if it's a case, you'll get it removed. So the next step was to perform a forensic study where we actually created an authentication system. And the authentication system was simple. When you scan this device, it authenticates you, and that's it, right? And we wanted to see if we can find that data in a computer's memory, and it turns out that you can. So that allowed us to identify that this device was used to open this door at this point in time, right? And every device has a unique ID, so we can link that device to the person that had it implanted. So what happened? Well, we went to a conference. He presented this paper, and Stephen won Best Paper Award. At the same conference, Clinton presented his paper, and I put some really awesome Arabic food in here so Ghassan can get really jealous, because I took Clinton and Stephen out, and we had a really good dinner. What you see up there is a Lebanese pastry. Well, it's fiha ba'al bakiya. Try to say it. Say ba'al bakiya. One. Okay, you're not trying. I don't know why you're not trying. It's so easy to say, guys. So you reap the benefits of doing cool research by going to New York, or in next month, literally, one of our students is going with us to Spain. Pretty cool place to visit, right? Which I'm going to talk about that research that he did that's allowing him to go to Spain. All right? Now I'm hungry. Now this is Lauren's work and LaShawn's work. By the way, I stole their slides and I put them in here and I mixed and I changed them just a little bit. But I do give them credit, which is a good thing. I'm taking a break. You see where our paper's names come from? They're all named after cool songs, or songs that I think are cool. You know the song? Yeah, who sings it? Ah. Okay. So, Lauren's like cringe, Abe. Tile trackers are just like the Apple AirTags. Does anyone have an Apple AirTag or tile? Okay, so these are trackers that you can place on things, on your animals, on your luggage, on your kids, on your keys, on people you're trying to stalk. You see where this is going, right? So you have a couple, right? I see where this is going. Watch out. I don't trust you. I have 100 trackers. Okay, the point is, we started doing this research. I literally went, it was a class, and I told my students, like, somebody should do the forensic analysis of these. I think I said that. I remember. Maybe I didn't. Maybe you guys came to me with the idea. And I was like, yeah, it's a good idea, because I was like, people are going to use this in a really bad way. And literally, right as they were doing their research, like a story came out about some guy stalking his ex-wife using these trackers. Because as someone who's in the field, I always look at something, I'm like, yeah, because somebody bad is going to use this in a bad way, right? And that's kind of the way you have to think. You have to think like the bad person constantly, right? I'm going to give them credit because they did the hard work. I just observed, and they still got to go to, where did you guys go for the conference that year? Baltimore. I don't know how fun, was it fun? No? Yeah, okay. She says no, she says yes. So I guess it's like halfway in between. Okay, so these devices basically help you track things. And the way they do it is by creating a network using all devices that have tile on them. And they connect to the tile tracker itself, and then it sends it to their servers, and you can identify the location of the device itself, okay? And they're growing rapidly, and people are using them more and more, which is a good thing. So what they did is they got the trackers, they created some scenarios, and they tried to analyze the data that's generated from the devices, both on the device as well as in a computer's memory. And for Android, they were able to find the battery level, the timestamps, and the UI IDs. And for iOS, they found the longitude, the latitude, and the timestamps. Okay, that's all fine and dandy. And they found that in virtual memory, which is also great, right? So then they went out and they created a tool, and the tool allowed them to put the data from both the device and the computer, because the use case for this is like, what's happening, right? Like, can I find the data on your device about your tile tracker? And in an investigation, it could involve multiple devices and multiple memory snapshots, right? And they were able to map out from this data the various things. And you could see the data was more granular, right, on the left-hand side from the virtual memory compared to the iPhone, right? So it was a lot more dots that you could find in memory versus just the iPhone's backup. This also indicates that the organization is storing more data points than they're letting out to their end users, right? Which is also kind of interesting, but it's also very good from a forensics. So I was telling my students for their papers, they have to evaluate their work, and you could see that they evaluated the SQLite database that is produced on the app versus what TAP generates, and you can see they match 1-to-1. So that means that their methodology is pretty sound, and that they're looking at the data correctly. And then, because they're like, oh, we're done with the paper, and I remember that. I was like, no, there's one more thing you have to add. And Lauren's smiling because she probably remembers that point in time. And she's like, what do I have to add? I was like, to make the paper cooler, let's do some anti-forensics. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, let's spoof the GPS locations using like a GPS spoofer and see what happens, right? And if I remember correctly, you spoofed that dog all the way from Louisiana to the Empire State Building, right? So someone's dog immediately went from Louisiana to the Empire State Building. So you can do that and make the dog look like it's in the Empire State Building. But I was like, okay, how are you going to forensically, when you're looking at this data looks weird. Like the dog is here 1 second and it jumps to New York like in 2 seconds, right? And what they did is they wrote an algorithm that basically looks at like how fast are you flying from here to here. I think if it's like, if in 1 minute you're from Louisiana to Mississippi, it's still weird, right? Maybe unless you're like on the border, but that's besides the point. Okay, so that's the tile forensics work. All right, now I'm going to just show you an overview of a couple of things so that we can call it a day and you can have fun and leave. So, okay, if you're leaving, you got to dance. All right, there you go. Just a little more. So again, this paper's name came from this song. So with Abdur, we bought these robots, and actually a student started working on this earlier. Her name is Sarah, and we started working on this a while back until we were able to figure this whole thing out. And then Abdur developed the tool and went ahead with the research project and kind of finalized it. What we wanted to do is to see what the Roomba is really collecting. How many people in here have a Roomba in their house? Okay, so we wanted to be like, what is the Roomba really doing in your house? And can we use it to detect a dead body in your house, right? So is a Roomba your alibi, right? Can it be our alibi or your alibi or not your alibi, maybe proving that you killed someone? So the first thing that we did, we set up the Roomba, and then we started, there's something called certificate pinning, where you can pin the certificate of an application in order for you to be able to figure out, to decrypt essentially the data that's going between the app and the servers. And that allows us to discover APIs. And once we discover the APIs, we can then pull data from their servers to see what are they actually, like what data are they actually holding. Because what you see on the app is not what's on their servers. You see what I'm saying? And we wanted to see what other stuff can we get out of this. So based on that analysis, Abdur created this app called PyRoomba. And what PyRoomba does is that it pulls this data and shows us what kind of things your Roombas detect. This is a navigation map it creates for the mission. You can see it detected cloth, socks, fabric bags, shoes, the total areas, it detected your oven, your cabinet, kitchen, your fridge, and so on and so forth. In the app, most of the time, it will never tell you this. It won't tell you I found socks. Right? It might show you a picture sometimes if it finds something and runs into, but they have classifiers on their back end figuring out what's actually in your house, which is not great from a privacy perspective, but maybe great for us forensically, right? So because I'm a mean advisor, I told Abdur to lay on the ground and to run the Roomba in his house and place a knife next to him. And we wanted to test the feasibility of being able to use the Roomba to detect if there's a body and maybe a knife and some other things. And you could see it indeed was able to identify that there's an object there. And that gave us a time reference for when the body was laid there, which is really great, again, from a forensics perspective. And then it was also able to identify an object there. It didn't tell us it's a knife, but it told us there's an object there. But that's also a great time reference, right? One of the biggest problems, if you remember in the O.J. Simpson case, right, was things were moved around. And that was one of the biggest issues in that case, because the investigators came to the crime scene and things were moved around. This sort of evidence can kind of help us figure out if things were moved around or not. All right, I'm going to move on to this other paper that's being worked on. I dare you to tell me who sings this song. What? No. Ooh, that's a tough one. Again, I'm just taking a break. Whoever figures out this the singer right now, I mean, why aren't you pulling out your phone and like using Shazam or whatever? Yeah.
Cheating.
Why is it cheating? He's using ChatGPT cheating?
Different discussion.
All right. You changed your mind immediately. I don't know why. All right. So we did the same thing here. Does anyone use Progressive's insurance app? Okay. Is your insurance low? So you're a bad driver. Yeah. If you learn to drive in Lebanon, it's pretty wild. So based on that, we were able to see what Progressive is actually doing and what kind of data they're collecting and what kind of classifying they're doing on their back end. Again, very useful in a car accident, very useful in a hit and run, right? Now the song is stuck in your head. So one of the cool things, again, this is called PieShot, right? Is the app is actually able to detect which seat you're in. And that's a little crazy if you think about it, right? A lot of times it won't tell you this, but again, we pulled this data from the servers and we could see what it's classifying. I don't know how it's doing that, but one of the students that was on this project, Trevor, one of his friends has a car, and the car is, I think it's a European car or something, where the steering wheel's on the right-hand side, right? And he sat in the passenger side, and he had the app with him, and guess what the app told him? It told him you're in the passenger side. I thought that was like mind-blowing. I was like, that's really cool. I don't know how you did that, classifier, but you classified it well. All right. So then the question is, like, what kind of things can you do with this data? Once you uncover the data that they're collecting, can it be used forensically? So the first thing we did was we tried to look at the data in a more granular way and to see if the data is correct, right? And how did we do that? Well, we looked at the data that Snapshot is collecting versus a GPS logger on another phone in the same car. And as you can see, they matched 1-to-1. Our GPS logger had more fidelity because we were collecting more data, right, using it. But you could see that the mapping is quite solid between the red points and the blue points. On the bottom side of this of this part of the slide, you'll see on the left-hand side that we also tried to fake the GPS locations. You see those lines going like gray? That's like, oh, you just went from here to there very quickly. In the app, that's what it shows you, right? But in our app, as we downloaded data from their servers, they ignored those points. So it's very interesting that in the PieShot app, it shows, like there's something weird going on here, but in terms of their data, they were still able to block the flawed data out. And you can see using PieShot, you can collect a lot more data about the actual incident versus the iOS app and the Android app that comes for you as a user to use. Obviously, because they're doing things on their servers that we gained access to that you wouldn't have known otherwise. So then we're like, all right, we need to do a case study. What did we do? Went to Amazon and we bought a mannequin. All right? And I told them, go do a hit and run with a mannequin. And this is what they did. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, insurance prices in Louisiana are very high. I guess so.
No quitters in Louisiana.
Yep. Let's just kill them all. Right? And what you see in the image down there is the actual, representation of the video, and the map shows you clearly when they stopped, when they moved, et cetera, et cetera. So this would have been great for us to be able to reconstruct the actual accident just from the app data that we were able to pull from their servers. Okay. This is my last slide, all right? Because I wanted to give you tales from Abe's Bit Lab. So what else have we done? Clinton's working in the domain of AI forensics. And it's a term that I coined with another colleague of mine about being able to conduct forensics to understand what the AI is doing, right? This is very important. Or to figure out, if you know what models are, like, can I take a model and say that this model was trained on this computer, right? And we're calling that model ballistics, right? Just like how when you shoot a gun, you're like, this bullet was shot by this gun. We want to be able to figure out, was this model trained on this computer? Are there any characteristics of a system that can tell us that it was trained on this system? My student Taha is working on Docker forensics, right? So how can you extract data from Docker instances? As you know, Docker instances are ephemeral. They're not like a computer where you have all the data that you want from it. Like, how can you extract what's happening in the Docker itself, right? The who, the what, the where, the why. One of my other students, Joseph, did, do you know Truth Social, the social network created by Trump? So he did the forensic analysis of that, right? And then he also did Threads and Blue Sky recently. And the other kind of research that we're looking at, and this is like the memory forensic tool that everyone uses, is called Volatility, and it's written in Python, right? So Python's good, but it's also slow. So if we want to change it so that you can process terabytes of data, right, you'd want to convert it to something else, right? If you want to convert to C and C++, these thousands and thousands and thousands of line of codes have to be changed, and they don't work as well. So we're like, well, what can we do to make it work faster, right? And what did we do? Because we're lazy. People ask you, why are you in computer science? You're like, the answer is because I'm lazy. I want to automate everything, right? That's why I'm in this field. We're like, why can't we just change the interpreters? Because Python actually has different interpreters, and people don't really know that. They just use the default CPython interpreter. And there are just-in-time interpreters that are actually, that the performance are much higher, like PyPy is one of them. So we tested all these interpreters, and we were able to increase the processing speed by like 20 to 25%, which in the large scheme of things could save you a lot of time, especially if you're processing terabytes of data. All right? And on the bottom left there, what do you see? What's that device? For those gamers that are out there. Huh? It's a Steam Deck, right? So now one of my students, Ruba, is working on the forensic analysis of the Steam Deck. And so there's one in the lab. I'm not sure if they're using it for that purpose, but they should be. All right. hopefully that give you enough tales about some of the things we're doing in our lab, about cybersecurity, about digital forensics. Hopefully you enjoyed the music sessions that were part of the presentation. And I'd be willing to take any questions that you may have. Yes.
It's not cryptography related.
No, that's fine. Go for it.
It's actually machine learning related. In terms of when you were talking about using the VR headsets for military personnel use, and you showed the data set that they worked with to test when they were messed with or when it interfered with their pathways and different things like that. Do you think it'd be possible to train a neural network to help detect when it is a false advertisement or when it is an attack?
Yes.
Could it be used in?
Yes, but I think it has to be attack specific. So right now, for example, I have colleagues that are at the University of Texas San Antonio in Missouri, and what they've done is they've developed models for the detection of cyber sickness using eye gazing data, right? Because in our study, we're actually collecting eye gaze data, we're collecting the movement data, and now we're also collecting a new kind of data where, like, if you shut your eye, you open it or you close it, we're collecting that data as well. So all of that data could be probably used to train some of these things, but I think it's either going to be attack specific or it's going to be cognition specific. So we have a large grant that we applied for. We don't know if we're going to get it, but one of our partners has models that can help you detect all sorts of cognitive states. So like fatigue and so on and so forth. Yeah, so it's almost like a cognitive firewall is what we're trying to build. Any other questions? Come on, throw one at me.
Are you going to dance?
Mike. I need like some MC Hammer music. Any other questions besides dancing? Yeah.
Do you plan to do any more work in the research realm of the implants?
So my wife is really convinced I'm ADHD. I guess that answers the question. I think I don't know how much more we could do. I would like to do more, but it's one of those projects like that was really cool. You know, it's like if you were in a relationship with someone, you fall in love with that person, and then it's over. Like that's how I feel about it right now. Just say it. But no, I mean, I'd like to, but we would need an angle, right? And I don't know what the angle is. If you can come up with an angle, I would love to do more work in that area. The angle probably would have to be in techniques of avoiding discovery, I think would be kind of a cool angle. Yeah. Anybody else? Come on, one more question. I just want one more, and then I'll go. Yes. No, I'm just joking. Okay. So I think the device is pretty awesome. It's still pass through. So like in our research, we're using what's the device we're using called? No, not the HoloLens. The other one, huh? Yeah, the Magic Leap. So that's what we're using. We're using the Magic Leap, and the Magic Leap is true augmented reality. They're actually glasses where you can augment 3D objects in front of it, right? Whereas the Apple device is 100% pass through. It means like you're looking at a camera feed, but the camera feed is so good that it looks realistic. Right now, the Oculus also has pass through, but it's much lower quality, right? So I think it's great for us as security people because you're not looking at the real thing. That means like the whole world for us is open for us to manipulate you as a human being because in fact, what you're seeing is a digital signal and you're not seeing an analog signal, right? So that's my take on it. Now, that's one thing. Now, the other thing is no matter how good it is, it's still not as good as what I'm looking at right now. Right? I haven't even put them on, but I can tell you 100% that you're probably going to be walking and looking at like your microwave at home through that Apple headset, and you're probably going to see some flickering. It's just not going to be as good as the fidelity that we look at through our own eyes, right? And I think that that's arguably bad. But I also think they released it because they wanted to have something out there until they get to the point where the technology is good enough so that you don't have to do that. The other thing is the device is completely, like the way they designed it and the design approach and everything is that this device is for you. Even when you're buying it, you have to scan your head and it's like, it has to be for you. Like you're spending $4,000 or $5,000 buying a device for you. You can't share it with your friends. You can, but it's not going to be as good of an experience, right? So then the question is like, is it really worth spending that much money on? Right? And that's also the other flip side of the equation. So I think that over time, it's probably going to be one of the better ones. But I think the release right now was just because they wanted to get the technology out there into people's hands. I'm not sure if they care so much about the financials at this stage in time. Right? I don't know if that answers your question. Anybody else? No more? One more? You can ask one more. No more? Cryptography? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you guys for coming to listen to this wonderful lecture.